Good morning, everybody. Hi, it's great to be here. It's great to have my family here, Carl and Eric and Rochelle and Deb. And thank you for your love and support. Also, thanks to Laura and Craig for your beautiful music. Just wonderful. And to Anna, I know you weren't feeling well, and for you to come and drop off your tape for us was awesome, so thank you. Thanks, Greg. I'm a tall one. So today I'm going to speak on the topic of grace, how to embrace it as a gift, and how it's linked with gratitude. I chose the subject for a few reasons. It's not often talked about at all, and maybe because it's a difficult concept, actually, and there's a lot of information on it. And Reverend Annie wrote an article in the Interfaith newsletter in September, and it triggered a childhood memory, which was, "There but for the grace of God go I." And my mother raised us in the Catholic tradition, and she used to tell us when we'd see something, a difficult situation or a poor family or some accident or something, she would always say, "There but for the grace of God go I." And so we were raised that we had God's favor in the Catholic tradition. It was like God's favor that we were spared, and when we complained that we were lacking in some way, we would just remember that message that we were blessed. So I'm not sure if it's God's grace that actually spared me from a life of poverty and suffering. I'm not convinced on that quite yet, but I know for sure that my mom's words kept me centered when I was young, and that recurrent message just made me be thankful for my life that I had as a child and the life that I have now. So what's the meaning of grace? It's not the easiest word to explain. It's like faith or evil or salvation. It has multiple meanings and interpretations as well. And the dictionary describes grace as a blessing that is said before meals, a way to address a duke or duchess, a way to express beauty, charm, and elegance. It's also a form of mercy, as Craig's song revealed, a reprieve or an exemption, and so many other definitions. But the grace I'm going to talk about today is related to spiritual awakening, an event that offers the possibility of a sudden transformation. It can be a mini miracle or a God shot, as I call them, or even a near miss, a blessing in disguise. And I'm sure everyone listening has had experience in some form of grace and how it's impacted their lives. For this talk, I'm going to explain grace through quotes and readings and some personal experiences. My readings included M. Scott's book, The Road Less Traveled, the Islamic Sufi poets Hafez and Rumi, a mid-century Christian theologian, Paul Tillich, and Marianne Williamson from her book, Everyday Grace, that's based on A Course in Miracles. Grace can come to us in big and small ways, as a surprise, a moment of good fortune, or what Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist who founded analytic psychology, referred to as synchronicity. He invented that term to describe events that happen at the same time, and not because they have a related cause, but because they have a related meaning. Grace is usually life-changing in some way, and most of the time the events surrounding it are joyful ones. But sometimes it can be a paradoxical anecdote, a coincidence that's perceived initially as sad, stressful, unwanted, or unexpected. Although eventually, through a chain of simultaneous happenings, it usually leads to a good outcome and becomes a sort of blessing in disguise. And since childhood, I've had many grace-filled times, especially while out in nature, either hiking or just being still and observing. These special moments, just like the setting sun or the moon and constellations, mountains, anything like that, just brings me to a place of awe and beauty, and I experience grace. Even last week with the first snow, right before our service, it was hard for me to come because I was outdoors with my little dog, and it was just beautiful. The lawn was glistening, and the trees, and it was just magical, and it was certainly grace. And, you know, grace just brings absolute joy most of the time. And, you know, that comes with listening to music for many, art, songs. I enjoy, even Cat Stevens brings me to a place of grace from my childhood or my teen years. Like, there's certain songs that I feel, oh, I can feel grace in those. And as a nurse, you know, for so many years in ICU and ER, I experienced a different kind of grace. And that grace was really felt when someone took their very last breath, or when I would hear the first cry of a newborn baby. And I could feel that as well. So whether or not an event or situation is perceived as good or not so good, the bottom line is grace often wakes us up and shakes us up in some deep and meaningful way. But that's only if we stay open to its gift. M. Scott Peck describes grace as a powerful force that exists outside human consciousness and nurtures the spiritual growth of human beings. He explains that this spiritual development is part of our life purpose, and he gives the spiritual drive a name, and he called it love. The evolutionary force of love is a gift of the universe, created by universal laws, and is nurtured through grace. And Paul Tillich wrote about grace being active, something that happens that addresses us directly. He said, grace strikes us when we are in great pain and restlessness. The specific definition really hits home for me when I think of the death of both of my parents. About 12 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with acute leukemia and died within 6 months. And she probably was very ill for a while, but none of us knew that because she was so active and had a vibrant life. So I came from California, and she was hospitalized, and we visited together day after day and spent hours talking, mostly about life. And her wish for me was to forgive my father, whom I had been estranged from for several years. So we eventually did that with her passing, or after her passing, I should say. And we never became best friends, but we had a good relationship before he passed. I even hosted him in California for about 3 weeks, and we traveled around and did the tourist attractions, and we both really shared the love of nature. That's what I got from my dad, was his love of nature. So we did a lot of those things. So we found common ground, and that was definitely grace. It was a blessing in disguise, really, for my father and for me. And it came about from our shared grief of my mom's passing and her actual love and belief that healing could take place for us through compassion, forgiveness, and goodwill. And earlier I spoke about grace and synchronicity and chain of events. And so my mom's passing really started kind of a ball rolling for me in my own life. It gave me strength to leave a very unfulfilling long-term relationship, to sell my home that I loved very much, and to begin a new life, a new direction with an inspired focus. So dealing with unexpected major choices, decisions, and situations is an opportunity to surrender to divine grace and to actually see beyond fear by acknowledging a higher reality. Through the grace of God, the divine spirit, we can always transform life in meaningful ways. It takes a period of reflection, silence, and sacred stillness to ask for light and the ability to surrender to grace, allowing it to come into our heart space and to recenter our vibrational energies, dispelling darkness and opening us up to love. Marianne Williamson wrote that life is one long moment of gentle, unbroken grace, and that everyone is entitled to the pleasures of everyday grace. And no matter what, there is always an opportunity to be happy. She said, "An awe-filled grace will fill the skies and flood our hearts when we have remembered at last who we are to one another and that we are one another." So I'd like to share another personal story with you. My father passed away unexpectedly about 3 years ago. His death totally transformed the trajectory of my life that was planned in a major way by an early retirement from nursing and relocation to Michigan. One of the graces I experienced from this was reuniting and building relationships. I love you, Carl, Eric, with my brothers and sister-in-laws and nieces and nephews. And my retirement gave me the ability to pursue my personal interests and hobbies and reinvigorated my earth-based spiritual practices in a major way and allowed me the quality time for immersion into nature. And moving here has all brought me this wonderful spiritual community as well. Another grace. Through my research for today's talk, I found that gratitude and grace are very closely related. Gratitude is a feeling that comes in response to grace, and grace measures more of what's on our heart, what truly matters to us. Grace and gratitude are often wrapped up together in a gift as encouragement and joyful expressions. It's important to remember to be more grateful for who you are and what you have to offer, and that more grace you extend to yourself, the more grace that you can extend to others. So try to let go of anything that you're holding on to that doesn't have true significance. Anything that would get in the way of grace and gratitude, like physical clutter, false beliefs, judgments, unhealthy habits or relationships, a negative self-image, and unsupportive self-talk. And also remember that some things are not under our control. There will always be unexpected surprises, uncertainty, difficult people and situations, loss and failure. But if you have a reserve of grace and gratitude, you'll be more resilient and be better equipped to get through life's challenges much easier. So now I'd like to just present a literal hands-on opportunity through a common activity that we all do to express grace and gratitude. And you know how we taught children and even some of ourselves to sing happy birthday or the jingle bells jingle for 20 seconds while we're washing our hands to get them nice and clean. So I was thinking that we could use that time when we wash our hands throughout the day. We're doing a good thing. We're getting rid of all the viruses for this cold and flu and COVID period. And that we could think of ways to cultivate our grace and gratitude while we're doing that. We can think of just the fact that we're able to have running water and soap, and that we can actually have a space to do that when you think of the underdeveloped countries that do not have that luxury. You can always focus on your hands, what they've done for you over the years, how they've served you, how you've used them for work, how you touch people, and how you give and receive. And then you can always think of a grace-filled event and just recall it and bring that spirit into your heart. And I'd like to close this talk on grace with two quotes from the Sufi poets, which were loosely translated by Daniel Ladinsky. The first one is from Hafez. Could not grace, source of that nurturing love, be calling to us, "Oh, please come out and play"? Could not grace breaking in on and transforming us, carry us away and abandon in freedom and joy? And the second quote is from Rumi. On a day when the wind is perfect, the sail just needs to open and the world is full of beauty. On a day when the wind is perfect, the sail just needs to open and love starts. Today is such a day. Grace breaks through. Grace fills the open sail and brings transforming love. Grace is not so amazing, and grace is not so rare. Grace is every day, and today is such a day. And I have to just add this piece. I did it at the last minute this morning. I could not believe it. I usually read some meditations when I wake up or, check email, especially for the daily word. So it's from Unity Church. Daily word today was actually grace. I was like, oh my goodness, is that like serendipity and just so cool. But anyhow, I thought I might have just a minute to read what it said. So here's the email. I copied it. It is entitled Grace. Grace is my constant blessing. And for today, Sunday, November 21st. I discover grace all around me when I open my eyes, my mind, my heart to its presence. Grace reminds me that God's love is active everywhere and at every moment. Grace can be as quiet as a whisper. It's in the love I hear in the voice of someone dear, in the warmth and tenderness of a comforting touch. Grace is in the heartfelt welcome I receive when invited into a friend's home. It's the bliss I feel when I know I truly belong. God is in the heart of all grace as goodness and kindness in action. Always mind to receive and give in kind. My growing awareness inspires me to share this activity of God generously by calling it into expression. So that's my talk for today, and I hope that some of you might share some of your experiences of grace in your life. And I appreciate you all for your attention this morning and having my family here, which has made me extra emotional than usual, but thank you. I'm taking Janet's spot for the crying at the podium. So enjoy the rest of the day and have a safe and happy week and a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you. Namaste.